great pleasure to be with you all this morning. And I think Mr. Jabri has set the tone quite right with his inaugural speech. Just very quickly, about Sopra Steria, the company is a French IT services company, headquartered in Paris, was founded almost 54 years back. Today we have a strength of 60,000 people worldwide with around 6 billion euros of revenue. And in India, as it was earlier said, we have 4 centers with 6,500 people. And as it was said earlier, thanks for the introduction, I was an entrepreneur for almost 12 years before my company got acquired by Sopra in 2005. We were a 100 people team, built up the team to around 1,500, then we merged with Steria in 2015, became 5,000, and now today around 6,500 people. Since largely my experience has been in IT services and IT products, so the whole aspect of corporate excellence and sustainable growth, I would address it from the IT industry perspective. So just to give you very, very brief about IT industry, because Mr. Jabri covered in his speech about how AI and technology is making a big difference, and I think I'll come back to it again. When I became part of the industry in 2000, the industry was just 50,000 people and with just $8 billion of revenue. And just in 2.5 decades, from 15,000 people, now today the industry is close to 54 lakhs, 5.4 million. A huge exponential growth which has happened in the last 2.5 decades. And we are exporting currently around, this year I think it should end at $190 billion. Which was only $8 billion, and with a domestic business of almost $45 billion. So together the industry, with employing 5.4 million people, has a revenue of $250 billion. So a huge growth which has happened, and obviously the IT industry has, I would say that it has been primarily responsible for really fighting the Indian economic engine, because 2.5 decades back, I think the IT industry was just maybe 0.7%. It was contributing to the GDP. Today, it's almost contributing 7 to 7.5%, which is a huge. Obviously, I think we missed the manufacturing bus, which we are now trying to catch up. But the services bus, which we caught on, and within that, IT was the biggest one. I mean, all the growth which we see around, I mean, even if I have to give just one small example, in 2000, I think there was one engineering college in Greater Noida. Today, I think there are 65 colleges with, I'm sure, 35 or 40 MBA institutes. So, and with that, obviously, there has been, a lot of growth everywhere. Coming to the topic specifically, first of all, corporate excellence, how do you really define it? What does it really mean? Obviously, we can spend the whole day trying to say about it, but I'll just try to say that, from my perspective, corporate excellence is when you try to balance out the 3 important axes for any business. And the 3 important axes for the business is, you have the employees at one end, then you have the customers at the other end. And any business, it has to make money. Obviously, this morning I was told by Suresh that DigiYatra is a non-profit organization, but most of the businesses are for profit. So obviously, you have to ensure how do you give it back to the shareholders. And within this framework, the organization should grow with the people. Whenever we come across challenges, can those challenges be converted into opportunities? By utilizing the strengths of the people, utilizing the opportunities which have been given, and within that, then grow the organization. I'll come back to this again. And when we talk about the sustainable growth, obviously this is something which has been there in our Indian philosophy for ages. Earlier in the video, we were seeing that how the foundation has set up eye hospitals and bhavans at different places, and many schools and everything. So it has been part of our philosophy, but yes, I think recently it has taken a slightly different name, the sustainability. We're calling it as ESG, where E stands for environment, S is for social, and G is for governance, basically, which means that how do you manage, your organization in an ethical and value-based, and have the right governance around it. So obviously the question then comes as, can these two meet, why you want to have profit, you want to have the corporate excellence, and you also want to have a sustainable growth where you take care of the environment, the society, the social issues, can both of these meet? And that's what I would just try to do in the next 10 minutes to say that yes, it is possible in case if it is done in the right manner. So from my perspective, when we talk about corporate excellence, I think what's really important is there are again three axes here. One is your process, the second is the people, and the third is the technology base. And obviously technology is now playing a very, very big important aspect. But when it comes to process and people, are the organizations doing things which are only for short term, or they are adapting those practices which are for long term? And when you do it for short term, then I don't think so you can get to that excellence part. When you think of long term, obviously in the short term you have to ensure that how you can survive. But what's really important is to have things planned for long term, where then it is definitely possible. And that's where a couple of years back, I follow this author quite regularly. His author actually 3 books. Author's name is Jim Collins. Maybe some of you might have read his books. He wrote Good to Great, then he wrote Built to Last, and then he wrote Mighty Has Fallen. So he's also covered the organizations which he covered in his Built to Last, what happened to them after 10, 15 years. But if I summarize the book, what he has really written, because he studied large number of organizations who have existed for at least 50 years. Because, there are many organizations which we have seen, they have come up, done big marketing blitz, sold a lot of things, and then completely disappeared. So he only took up these organizations which have been there at least for 50 years, and then studied what kind of processes they have followed, what kind of people practices what they have followed, what is their values and ethics, what they have done, because of which they have survived and they have excelled there. And obviously he has covered a lot of organizations there, but if I just pick up 2 or 3 things from there, one of the things I remember, he talks about Johnson & Johnson, which is obviously known for its FMCG products. Because, we all talk about the process, ethics, values, everything, but it is like, when the rubber touches the road, how does that rubber behave? That's important. So yes, you talk about your vision, but when it really happens, how do you deal with it becomes very, very important. So he talks about a particular incident where, there was a marketing summit which was happening where all the leadership team had flown. This was slightly a remote place where it did not have a direct access to an airport or a train. It was in the US. And one of the leaders, he came to know that when he then reached and the summit was running, that his mother has become seriously ill and she's possibly reaching towards her, she's kind of on the deathbed. And when the CEO came to know about it, and obviously know that there was no airports, nothing to reach to that particular place, he did not even think twice before saying that, okay, why don't you take my private plane and fly to your town or city so that you can be with your mother. So this is when we talk about, when we talk about excellence, excellence is not in terms of just saying, putting it on your, vision documents. It is that is when it comes on the ground, how much you are following it and the way you are following it. And the second example I remember from it, and there are many of it once you read the book, but which it comes to my mind is about Toyota. Obviously in a business cycle, you always have its ups and downs and downs and ups. It's a sensual cycle. And when it is a downtime, that is where it becomes important. How do you treat your people? How do you treat your customers and everyone? So he talks about Toyota, which is obviously known for its sorry about this, I had a slightly bad throat last night. So he talks about Toyota where obviously when it was on the downside cycle, there were many of the employees who became redundant. I mean, they did not have really the jobs to do. So the first thing which comes to any businessman's mind is, to save the cost, let me fire the employees. So that, I have an exit path for them, which can help my business. But that's not what they did. They went to the people, shared very openly that what has really happened, and told them that yes, this is the situation where we are in. And in this situation, can you take a X salary cut? And also what we can do is during this time as we navigate through the difficult time, they said yes, we have this job or work available to work, and the garden, we have, so they define different jobs and activities, which normally, it's done by not the blue collar, it's done by the white collar people, and the people there, they said, yes, absolutely, it's any job is good and we would be very, very happy to do it. And that's what they ended up taking it up, and in a few months, I think the cycles came back to its original, its an original path, and all the employees were there. Now, obviously, I'm talking about a particular incident, not necessarily always things happen like this, because sometimes you have to also take action. But even when you're taking those actions, can you do it in a way which, you respect the people, you respect the things, and do it in a very, open and transparent manner. So yes, the corporate has a lot of its responsibilities towards defining this process, people and technology to make it happen. But what is also important is people play a big role. All of you are the country's future. We are talking about 2047 to take the country towards Viksit Bharat, which Mr. Jaipuria presented. Also, you all have a big, big role to play there, because earlier I was talking with Suresh that, what really needs to change, for us as professionals. So one of the things is, when we talk about excellence, then excellence has to also come into the DNA of an individual professional. We were used to this word called chalta hai. It's okay, you've done it. Unless someone audits it, it's fine the way we have done. And that's what I've been telling all professionals, whichever profession you are in, that how can you become your own judge in terms of doing your work, so that the other person doesn't have to come and tell you that you've not done it rightly. And the second, which was fine, which was good for our growth initially, which we call as a frugal innovation, or in Hindi it's jugaad. That was okay when we were short of resources, and to try to do some frugal innovation there, it was fine. But just imagine if Digi Yatra was done in a frugal way. You go at the check-in counter and it doesn't recognize your face, what you're going to do. So then you have to, in fact, you were sharing with me in terms of how the whole system has been designed and the way they have taken care of everything. Also, I will leave it to him to describe about it. But he can't be talking about jugaad to make a system. This is a system which has to be, scale up, it has to take care of security, it has to take care of everything. And that is where your role becomes very, very important as a professional. When you come onto your jobs, how you forget jugaad and you think about scalability, you think about systemic thinking, you think about, yes, this is not something which is only for short term, and it is for long term. So yes, I think the organizations have their roles to play in terms of the excellence, but organization is nothing but it is a combination of people. And if people do not excel, there is no way the organization can excel there. So I think in addition to what organization does, the role of the people, the role of the professionals becomes, very, very, very important. So that's where I think, yes, we just spoke about all the economy, how it looks like. When I became an entrepreneur in '93, I came from a middle class where my father was doing a job. There was no funding, the banks would not give a loan, and only someone who came from a business family could think of doing a business, right? Fast forward 15, 20 years, I can tell you there is no better time in India than to do a startup. In fact, as he was talking about, become a job giver than a job seeker. Yes, I think this is the best time, and today the quality of entrepreneurs, which I see in the market, is completely changed in the last 1.5 decades. One of the data points which someone was talking to me about is that at IIT Delhi in the year 2000, 80% people were going to the Western world for greener pastures, whether it was job or it was for their higher studies, and 20% was staying back. Today that ratio is exactly reversed now. 20% are going and 80% are staying back. Even our favorite chai spot, which is the Chayus, which is competing with the world brand, Starbucks, it has been started by IIMs and IITs. So I think a lot of things are changing. I will not go into it again. Also, he was also referring to Ruchesh Sharma, who's a dear friend. We used to play badminton together, and I think whatever he said, what he told to Pranay Roy is absolutely right. So I think today we are going through a phase where I think it's one of the best times for companies, for people, and obviously the ecosystem which is there. And that is where I think the sustainability part also becomes equally important, which we spoke about the ESG, and that is where environment obviously is very, very key. And we can already see that, yes, when industries are not taking care of the environment, especially when you set up industry plants, etc., then what really happens? Obviously, the environment also comes back with a big vengeance. So, for example, if you are setting up a paper factory where you require trees to make pulp, obviously it becomes your responsibility to set up or plant trees or set up a big forest. So I think from an environment perspective, it's equally important that how the organizations are fully committed to it. And I can tell you as Sopra Steria, we are committed that by 2027, we will be a zero carbon neutral organization. We are participating in audits in France where there is an organization called CDP. So we are A++ as part of that CDP audits for the last 3 years. And what we have committed, we would meet it by 2027. The second, yes, we spoke about AI. When we talk about IT, it is all data. And when we talk about AI, obviously it is cloud and data. And today the amount of data which, we said that India is one of the largest countries which is consuming, largest in terms of consuming data. That is great. But then when this huge, humongous amount of data is getting generated, you're storing it in this huge storage servers, you have this huge clouds. Obviously, this requires huge computing power. And when you require this huge computing power, you require huge data centers. When you require huge data centers, you need a lot of cooling. When you need all cooling, you know where we are leading to it. And that's where I think today with artificial intelligence, I attended a seminar 2 days back where there was a founder of a semiconductor company, and he was saying that in the last 17 years, we reached from a 0 to 500 billion revenue in semiconductors in the 70 years. Because today semiconductor is everywhere. When we talk about computing power, it's basically the chips behind it. And obviously today, everyone is talking about NVIDIA because that is the chip behind the ChatGPT or AI, right? And what he was sharing is that in the next 4 years, this revenue from 500 billion, it would go to 1 trillion. So 70 years it took to 500 billion, but just 4 years to double it to 1 trillion, which again means that for all these chips, the huge amount of cooling which will be required, it's not less. And that is where it becomes important that how do we think about what would be the modern way of cooling them, whether people are thinking of putting data centers under the ocean or putting it in Iceland where obviously the temperatures are different. So obviously we'll have to think a lot about it that yes, how do we take care of this? Yes, today I don't think so we can do it without data. We can do it without anything but not without our mobile phone, because the moment your Wi-Fi is switched off, you start thinking that some part of your life is gone, correct? So this will be there, and it is only going to become bigger and bigger with all AI coming in, with the facial recognitions, with everything being there. ChatGPT obviously came in, there are competitors which are coming in there. So I think this whole aspect of also how you are managing your data. Are you purging your data at the right time so that you don't need that storage for it? So yes, there is a huge challenge in front of us in terms of ensuring that we respect the environment, we ensure that there is a social, equitable distribution of wealth. Obviously, we saw what the Greville Foundation is doing, but yes, it becomes equally important for all organizations to ensure that a part of their wealth, obviously the Indian government has made it compulsory that we spend 2% of our profits to the social side, and ensure that how do we have the right governance to take care of our ethics and values. And that's why when we see the convergence happening between the corporate excellence and the social sustainable growth aspect. And we think that, whether this is possible or not. But, many years back, when IBM was a huge company, it was not doing very well. I think it was in the initial, between 2004-5. And then they got this new CEO from outside called Louis Gessner. And he has then authored a book later because everyone said IBM is so huge. Can we change it? Can we transform it? And he did that. And how he did it, he actually authored a book called How Elephants Get Tax. So same thing, yes, India is a huge country. We have huge challenges. But I think the opportunities which it has thrown in the last few years and the young population which we spoke about it earlier, the demographic dividend which is there, obviously we want to ensure that it doesn't become a demographic disaster. But yes, there are huge opportunities. People are getting exposed. The Gen Z which is coming today is very confident. I mean, I see that my son is 28 years and my 27 years and my daughter is 31. I see them, the confidence which they have, we did not have when we were growing up. So yes, there are huge opportunities. Organizations have their commitment to do the sustainable growth, as well as you all as professionals have equal contribution towards the excellence side. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you and wishing you all the best.